Good morning, everyone. Today is Saturday, August 27th, and we are here with the Psychic Sorority and the Party of 12, which is a delightful group of souls working in the afterlife for world peace and here to help us birth this new humanity. And of course, the party is headed up by none other than Albert Einstein. And so this morning, we're going to be talking about regeneration in human stem cells. This is a topic that throughout the many years that I've been a channel, which has been 35, 34, something like that, I have done a lot of channeling for other people who have been researching this, how to regenerate spinal columns, how to grow back limbs. And so I want to visit this once again because I think we've come a long ways since those years that I've been channeling that. And I'd like to hear what Einstein and the party have to say. And of course, the discussion with the Psychic Sorority. So welcome to the party. So I have recently resolved and revolved a kind of a major conflict that I've been going through here where I live. And I don't have to get into the details of it, but I wanted to just share what I learned about making peace with the people I had been in conflict with, is that there's always room for regeneration. There's always room for forgiveness. There's always room for healing relationships. I was thinking after I had encountered two people I had been in conflict with, and now there was peace and we had lovely conversations, that now I can start anew, not just with them, but with the particular issue that the conflict had brought up. And that got me thinking about regeneration. For many years, I did some channeling on a regular basis for a triad of people. One of the women in that triad had another triad of people that were getting channelings on a regular basis, and they were all nurses. The original one that Jane was in with Bob, and I forget who the other gentleman was, but they were all wanting to know about regeneration of spines, of growing back limbs. And of course, for the life of me, I can't remember one thing that was said. And I want to reach out to Bob and see if he even has all of that information. And then I thought, well, we can always ask again. And one of our friends who lives in Norway, Hecke, who is a doctor, she has also expressed this interest in how does that happen? How can we do that? Because we know that within our bodies, we have stem cells. And stem cells are sort of free roaming cells that can become anything. And in our model, with our Einsteinian model, when emotion is flowing up and intuition is impelling the next most advantageous step for the good of the whole, one of the levels that intuition is doing is it's instructing those stem cells to go be bone and to go be hair, as per the mathematics of our physical body that is coming from our part of the source. So we have these stem cells in us now, not quite as many as, say, the starfish or the crab, who can regenerate not just limbs, but apparently the starfish can regenerate its whole entire being. And so I wanted to know what was the difference between those animals and us. And I found a very interesting article by Britta Christensen. She is a cancer genetic counselor at the Mayo Clinic, and she wrote a very interesting article, and I'll link it below. And it was about what was the difference between humans and mammals in how they regenerate. And in humans, what happens is if we cut off our arm, we generate scar tissue. So that heals that wound, and it doesn't allow for any kind of regeneration of that. In a crab, say, or a starfish, they, as opposed to us, they send stem cells to that area of their bodies, which then somehow, she didn't say how they miraculously know how those stem cells then form that arm again to make it into that arm. But that there was some kind of command from the system that instructed that. So I started to kind of remember back in all that channeling that Einstein was saying, within us, we have that capacity, but it's cut off. And so somehow we have to open it up again, open up the genes or something to allow what we knew when we were in embryo, growing the whole body, to reactivate. So I am very interested in hearing more about this, because I think regeneration on that level is coming sometime in the future, I think. But regeneration in general, about everything, whether it's these relationships with the people in the church, whether it's recovering from any kind of physical illness, cancer, we have that potential. And how do we tap into that? What do we do to tap into that? So that's the focus on the channeling today. But anybody have any ideas they want to share about this topic?
So our regeneration has been hijacked.
Shut down.
Yep, shut down. I really relate to it. I've been kind of interested in it a long time. My partner had gotten stem cell surgery, and at the same time, coincidentally, I came across something about stem cell hypnosis, and actually under hypnosis or that hypnotic state, to that would be a way to talk to them. And I have done this. I've done this lots. And another thing is, I've heard not too long ago, for teeth. And however, I haven't grown any new teeth, but I have grown teeth where I was missing a part of a tooth. I put oregano oil on it, and it forms a tooth. It's yellow, not white, but it's tooth. And I went to a dentist after doing that, and she said, "Your tooth filled in." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Okay, well, I don't have to do anything." And went to the next, she left, went to the next dentist came in and said, "Well, this is kind of yellow and kind of funky here. I'm going to take it out and fill it in with white white stuff, and, so he ruined my whole experiment. But anyway, I'm still working on it. And my mom is too, with some teeth, this oregano oil and silver. It regenerates it. But I want to know more. I want to know more scientifically, specifically, am I doing this right? Or, because there are some obvious things I should be doing it with that I haven't, because I just haven't been making that a part of my life. I will now that I am learning more.
So when you did the oregano oil and the tooth, was that it? I mean, you didn't supplement it with any sort of meditative grow tooth grow sort of thing?
Now, that's a good question, because my question would be to Einstein, was that my intention? How or what percentage of it was my intention? Okay, I'm putting this oregano oil because I know that or I was told, and I know now, that it fills in. So is that my mind over that, or what? That's a good question.
Did you say silver too, Debbie?
Yep. Yeah. I originally just did oil, but I heard silver accentuates it.
Is that colloidal silver?
Yeah, colloidal silver. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I would say epigenetics and the biology of belief, and that the crustaceans and the starfish don't know any better.
That's what I thought too. They don't have a voice in their head saying, you can't do this, or people outside them saying, you can't do this.
Right, right.
Well, just one more interjection with German healing knowledge. We lose dental, we lose tooth, you know, we get cavities when we're having a bite conflict. And then if we resolve that bite conflict, wanting to bite someone is a primal kind of, you know, someone who's making you mad. But normally we're not allowed to bite people, eh? We're not allowed to bite our parents or our bosses or our teachers. Even as little kids, as they start biting, they always get chastised. You're not allowed to bite, but that's a natural thing to want to bite someone if you're angry or threatened or whatever. You lose you get cavities, and then if you resolve your bite conflict, the body will repair the teeth. There'll be some swelling, there'll be pain, there'll be a hole there. And so now they want to fix it, but your body's actually already fixing it when you're feeling the pain and the swelling. The tooth may get loose, so you may have to be careful not to, you know, disturb it. I'm interested in growing, regrowing, like having a third set of teeth. We get two, right? But I have some teeth missing now, the permanent teeth, so-called. I'd like to grow a couple of new teeth.
So when Dr. Hammer was he working on himself and his teeth? This is what he was?
Well, he knew about that conflict and how it went, that program, when you're conflicted, when you're in the healing phase. So he knew this tooth was healing, but it was getting pretty loose. So he had, instead of getting, you know, having any normal dental work done, like whatever they would recommend, he just got this dentist to build him some kind of a structure to keep it in place while the healing occurred. And then
right. So, but did he also document the resolution of his bite conflict?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he told people who he wanted to bite. I don't know. But he figured out, he must have resolved it, to have gone into the healing phase and had the, you know, the pain and the swelling and the, you know, the cavity.
This is my curious question about regeneration in humans, is that so far, all of the attempts of regenerating stem cell or regenerating spinal columns and any kind of regeneration has been an external approach with doctors doing stuff to you. So how to test and experiment with people who are going to be willing to go into the resolution of those conflicts, the revolution of those conflicts in our case. But I think that was a question I asked you some weeks ago about if somebody comes to you wanting German healing knowledge, if they're not willing to resolve the conflict themselves, that's something that you really can't do for them. You can heal the symptom of it, but that's my curious thing, not just about
heal anybody else. You can just give information about how the body works, how the biology works, how it works with the psyche, you know, and the brain, how it all works, which is what he just spent his decades researching and documenting and, you know, mapping out in the brain and so on, the body. But yeah, and he can, you know, we can tell you what the conflicts are, but you have to figure out where that happened in your life, with who, how, when, what keeps re-triggering it potentially. And then you have to do the work to resolve that. And very often it's something that's way past and gone. You know, it can be, if it's been a chronic condition, especially something that's long gone.
I'm wondering about German healing knowledge, as well as what I'm attempting to go forward with, is that if you don't have those people who are going to resolve those conflicts, how do you really research? I mean, you can look at, he looked at what, brains?
Brain scans, CT scans, thousands and thousands. So
Right.
you could see where the conflicts had impacted in the brain and therefore what body part would be affected. He talked to all the people and asked what was going on in their lives.
Okay. All right. That's what I was missing.
Yeah,
Was that,
yeah, and people came to him. He
right.
didn't, yeah, people came to him because they were interested in understanding.
So it was a correlation research. Louise Hay did the same thing. She would go around and talk with people with different ailments, and then interrogate or interview them for, you know, as far as what was going on in their lives, and then also what other people did before us, you know, just looked at the history of anything that was documented, and but it was all correlation, you know, research, which is a valid research.
Oh,
but
yeah.
again, how Einstein says that, you know, it could be because in our community, you know, we said, oh, I have, you know, my grandma always would say my teeth hurt because I want to bite someone. And then we're, you know, so it may be something that, you know, we're triggered by it because we learn through our cultural voices. You know,
Yes.
that is also a possibility.
Possibly, and observation, like observing people's behavior and how they do. Yeah.
Yeah. You can just use it as one part of the picture.
Yeah.
You know, I have hardware in me from T11 to L1, and I have 6 screws. And
In your back?
Yes. So I have two rods on either side of my spine and 6 screws. And they came from when I had the seizure brought on by the medication, and I crushed my own 12th thoracic vertebra and bulged the disc during that seizure. So one of the things when I was dealing with all of the pain in the year following was, and trying, you know, getting scans done, trying to figure out what is wrong. One of the bottom right screw actually snapped in 2. No way of knowing why that screw broke, for sure. In doing all these scans, trying to figure out how to deal with this excruciating pain, we found out that I had built really, really good bone around that broken screw and those screws in less than a year. I had built a lot of good solid bone. So my body did its own rejuvenation, and probably in that process, probably kept me from having to have them go in and obliterate nerves to try to stop the pain. I mean, I still get pain, but it's not at the site. It's more radiating. It radiates around me when it gets flared up. And I'm very susceptible to the barometer and weather changes. So I always know 2 days ahead that the weather's changing. And so they had told me a long time ago I had osteopenia and some osteoporosis. And the last bone scan I had done 2 years ago, they couldn't find any osteoporosis and very little osteopenia. Our bodies are miraculous. They do have ways of healing. I'm excited, but I just wanted to put that in because I have experienced a lot around that issue. And at the time, they didn't even know if I would walk.
Wow.
And that surgery was all done in an emergency setting. And you know, they told me I would have 2 more back surgeries. The vertebra above and the vertebra below will go because of the fulcrum and the pressure that gets put on it. And so I just went back to the surgeon. The surgery was done in September of 2011. And lo and behold, I didn't have to have another back surgery now.
Congratulations on that, on healing yourself, and for sharing that the potential is more than just the potential. Brought to me that my tooth actually gave itself a root canal. I had a tooth. It was a front tooth, and they were going to pull it out. And I was like, no, not my front. And so I did. I gave it love, though. I gave it love, and I just want to say too, that I think this might be the part of the answer anyway, is vibration of love. You know, you've heard of the med beds coming out, this miraculous healing of the body, and it's all vibrations, all different frequencies that they tune into a healthy liver if you're having liver problems or whatever. But I have a feeling it has to do with love. I know I healed so many parts of my body by just loving it, no matter how hard it was. Just read this research hot off the presses. Cat purring, talk about vibration, has been shown to regenerate bone density.
And now more of the people who are holding them.
You put a cat on your wherever. I have a bone thing going on near my back, so I like to have them by both sides of me, and they do too. They will naturally do that. And I had a hysterectomy, and a cat just came out from the woods nowhere and just would sit on my abdomen. It's almost like it knew. And then when I was all healed, it ran off again. I had 2 other cats come when I had carpal tunnel, and they healed that. It's just, there's something about cats and purring, I've just got to say.
Oh.
So I would suggest, I don't know, you might all know the book, Biology of Belief. In the 8 chapters, at the end of each chapter, there is an exercise to prove to yourself that this is so. And, you know, that's the epigenetics. And belief has more to do with everything. And that's energy, you know, and listening to Linda and her putting out clear vibrations about her belief of where she was willing to draw the line, where she was willing to go with the situation. And Debbie, you too. And then, you know, it's just amazing. Abraham Hicks talks about this. They channel the fact that we can all heal ourselves. It's the culture that we come into that removes a lot of different things we come into the world with, and that our state of being is first and foremost one of wholeness and wellness. So it is a mind connection to the body. And I think what Dr. Hammer did was gave the patients an awareness of what his research gave. And then the patient was in charge. We have been for a long time on the cusp of bringing forth by these very channels and the work of Dr. Hammer and others, the fact that we're really limiting ourselves in this life in so many ways. I started a relationship, which is the other thing, is to not call myself a patient within the practitioner realm, and to say I've started a new relationship with an energy healer over the last 1.5 years. And the work there has to do with the foundational pieces of what do I believe. And she looked at, you know, I did a workup for her, and I did. And she said, no meds? I said, no need for meds. And she said, you're my first. Now she's a 30 something, I think late 30s. So yeah, this conversation is wonderful.
Well, and I've always used conflict resolution to heal most everything, and done in a way that isn't just my own hands-on, I'm going to heal myself, but letting intuition lead me to those things that will heal. In using conflict resolution, the idea is that all this trapped anger or abscessed emotion, which can be from other lives, much less our childhood, needs to be redirected, felt and redirected. And
I just want to add one other element that helps. You know, we talked about all this, you know, and conflict resolution really encompasses all that we're talking about. But another one is the gratitude, seeing it for, oh, thank you for getting my attention. I wasn't really loving myself in that way. I wasn't really honoring myself or whatever, you know, because it always comes back to the self. And so, but being grateful, it's powerful.
Definitely. All right, shall we call in the party and see what Einstein has to say about all this? So let's begin by centering ourselves each where we are, taking some deep breaths. And let's imagine ourselves sitting in a circle together in the same place, wherever that place is. Maybe for me, you're all here in my living room. And maybe some of you are have us out by the edge of the water or in the woods or somewhere calm and peaceful. Even though we aren't in the same physical place, as we imagine that we are, we can get in touch with the non-physical part of us that is connected, that does transcend space and time and death. Be in that non-physical consciousness right now. Let go of the surroundings of your physical body and just imagine us, all 5 of us, sitting in a circle together. And surrounding us is the party. Which is huge. More and more souls join the party all of the time. But the inner circle of the party contains many souls who in real life had been scientists and doctors and clinicians who wondered these same questions that we're asking ourselves. And so we will command that only the most divine light shine down upon us at this time, and that the greatest good be present here. So here you are. We welcome you to this circle of souls, and we are delighted that you who still have bodies have volunteered and were chosen to be a part of this grand experiment, which, by the way, from our point of view, is succeeding very successfully. You are taking in these bigger, broader concepts, these truths that exist in your physical body, and you're pulling them up into your consciousness. So when you're talking about regeneration, first of all, it's happening all of the time. With human beings, it takes about, they say 7 years to where you have a completely new body. The cells and the genes in your body have regenerated and turned over and become a completely new body. Now, the way that it happens, it's based upon the mathematics of your DNA, that you came here to be a woman who's 5'8", who was born with red hair and now has gray hair, what have you. So there is a set of mathematical formulations that you bring with you into your physical body that creates all of that, and of course creates the world around you. And all of those mathematical formulas are part of your compilation of consciousness that's in the source. It's a part of the source, but it's a subset of the source. And it has the whole entire source, every potential possible, in a subset. In a subset of that subset of you is the outline and the details of your physical body. And within that mathematics that you bring with you into life, and of course, every day your string is spinning from the source in the center of the earth up through the planet, through emotion, intuition, intellect, free will, into the lens that then your physical body is made manifest into physical form with all of the cells and everything that is making your physical body work. This truth that regeneration happens naturally is the basis for where you're moving forward into the future to master these regenerational questions. Because believe us, there are people all over the planet who have been working to unlock the secrets of this process. So how you can regenerate spinal columns that have been severed to grow them back. And yes, that is the answer, that you would send in stem cells to become the very substance, texture, and materials that would be reconnecting the severed parts of that spine with spinal material. We feel that the world has so much more knowledge and is so much closer to doing this than people realize. And so we are instigating this sort of regenerational challenge. Of course, we've been doing that since the start, conflict resolution and manifestation, and all of these ideas that we've brought you are all to break down those voices of culture in your head that say you can't. But also, in conjunction with changing those voices in your head, is tapping into that deep emotion. And this is why we never want anyone to feel like they're failing or there's something wrong with them. If you get into a conflict and you have a great deal of emotion around it, sometimes that is the only way to access that deep emotion, because it's in there. And you can have a beautiful, peaceful life and still have abscessed emotion, because you are processing all these other lives that you don't necessarily in this body, say as Lynn or as Debbie, that you don't necessarily remember, that you don't think about first thing. You search sometimes in your minds for what are the conflicts going on right now. And that's a good place to start. But to get to that depth of healing, of releasing the emotions in the abscess that get caught in our energy, those conflicts are sometimes necessary. And we want to say that even if, say you have a conflict with somebody and you're deeply triggered and you play out the drama, we call it stomping on sidewalks, where your ego gets to be frustrated and you're not necessarily doing a revolution, you're just releasing energy. Even if you never did a revolution on it, you would still be releasing that energy. It wouldn't be as efficient. It wouldn't be as lasting, but it's in the long-term goal of coming back here life after life after life. It's to get in touch with that deep, deep emotion. And sometimes that's the only way to do it. And that's why we created this process wherein you can take a conflict that drives you into deep emotion, and you can get into that deep emotion, and you can use your breath to feel and breathe and release. You can stomp on some sidewalks so that you can hear what it is that your intellect is telling you that you need to look at in yourself. And then you engage your witness, not thinking about it. It's not deducing, well, where did I do this and where did I do that I see in this mirror? It's activating your witness to say, let's watch. Here's what I'm looking for, that I don't respect myself or whatever it is. Now let's set about to watch where that is happening. And in that moment, when you're watching and you're watching yourself perpetuating, it may not be the same level of perpetuation that the person you're in a conflict with. Maybe it's a completely different scenario. And maybe it's just a little repetitive behavioral pattern that you're not noticing because your ego is too busy stomping on sidewalks. In that moment where your witness actually watches you make those decisions and then has that aha moment of, oh my gosh, look at me not respecting myself, or look at me not respecting that other person. That is the moment that you pick up your power. If there was any moment in picking up your power, it would be that, where you are able to observe yourself making decisions for the good of the few, whether it's for your ego and not all three of your three human dimensions, or it's for your ego and the other person you're in contact with. And then in that moment, there is no more empowering moment for a human than to observe that and change in that moment. Change what decision you're making. And this is incrementally, you are doing this as a part of birthing the new humanity. So this isn't just an instant fix. This is over time. You're changing your DNA, you're changing your voices of culture, you're changing your embedded patterns of how you relate to the world, of how you make decisions. And this is all leading towards eventually this new humanity where, like the crab, that things can be regenerated from within because of the change in the whole entire system. And that growing back limbs, regenerating stem cells, anything, as Debbie was talking about, working with teeth, these are just part of that compilation of consciousness in your source, sourced with your DNA, that are inherent in your physical body. And yes, when you say the root of this regeneration is love, it is compassion. Compassion as the fifth fundamental force of the universe that is impelling the other four fundamental forces, and then, of course, which translate into what's in the physical world as well, to manifest the good of the whole. And your natural birthright as a child of compassion is that your energy works to create what's best for the good of the whole. And humans have been given this free will in order to go through all these machinations, in order to go through this evolution. This is the evolutionary process, and you are privileged and lucky enough to be privy to some deep understandings that are just beginning to come out into culture. But those of you who have been studying this in other sources or working with us for all these years, you can see these changes. You can see these evolutions. Not the masses at this time do not, but many, many, many millions of people across the planet practice in this way. What we want to do is challenge all of you in the week ahead to really concentrate on the whole of who you are, that regeneration is a natural birthright within you, and that it is deeply embedded subatomic messages of lack, denial of the truth of who you are, limitation, fear, thoughts of fear, patterns of fear that are so deeply embedded that it's very difficult to get to them on the surface. So be grateful as you move forward for those times where you're in touch with those obsessed emotions, and challenge yourself daily, always, to access them and use them for your advantage. And one way you can do that is that when you do have a conflict, let yourself go there. Let yourself go there and feel with your breath. Move with your breath. And in those emotional moments where you're processing that deep emotion, that is not the time to process the intellectual piece of conflict resolution, where you're trying to formulate a sound bite about what you do that you see in this other person and where do you do it, trying to figure out where you do it. Take these as two separate therapies. So when you're in there feeling deeply, maybe you're stomping on some sidewalks, let that witness step out and replace the intellectual messages that you're getting about the other person or the situation or attached to that. And put in those moments what you want to create. And if it's physical healing, then you don't have to go through an intellectual study of where is it that you're not respecting someone and this and that. You just know, A, you're tapping into deep emotion, and B, you're channeling it now into what you want to create. And that is a major difference that many who study this are missing. There's many who think that those emotions are detrimental, that you only should do the good emotions and that's what you want. You should choose what you feel. And we're quite in disagreement with that. We think that when you separate emotion and intellect, there are no bad emotions. There are intellectual messages that will keep you tied to the illusionary arena of the conflict, tied to blaming somebody else, tied to berating yourself for not being a more evolved creature. There's a lot of that intellectualizing that is where we need to change. But all of those emotions are so powerful manifestors. And think about it. If you're constantly angry or sad or wallowing in some deep despair, and you're not going to allow yourself to move that causes illness. That's how powerful it is. Well, if it can cause illness because it's directed into these thoughts that are creating this reality, it can cause regeneration if it's directed into the thoughts of regeneration. So yes, it's about frequency, but not just of emotion, not just of intellect, but together, how they function together. And we would love to see people be able to feel those deep feelings and detach the intellect and refunnel them into what it is that you want to create and vision it then. And that's part of the experiments that are going on in this day and age. And that's part of what we're hoping to inspire you as our guinea pigs, as our lab rats, to work on. So we too can observe and see how these changes can take place through your own free will, through your evolving consciousness, through compassion flowing through you as your birthright. So, are there questions and conversations that you would like to have?
I would just like to clarify that on that last thing that you said about putting in what you want to create. Are you talking about refunneling with compassion? Do we use visualization or insert a new belief system? Could you be more specific on how to refunnel what we want to create?
Well, for an example is, say you have a very large fight with your mother or your sister or whomever, and you go back to your house and you just can't get your mind off of it. You can't get your mind off of what they've done and what they've said, because it's being fueled by this unsettled anxiety, anger, all of that. What we're saying is, if you commit yourself before a fight, if you commit yourself to, when you go through that again, to, in your intimate relationship with your mind, wrestle your thoughts away from them and into what it is you want to create, whether it's a peaceful relationship with them, whether it's growing your teeth back, whether it's finding successful partnership. It doesn't matter what it is that you want to create. Well, we would say for the good of the whole, with love and compassion. But you don't have to be feeling compassion in that moment to cipher that emotion through those thoughts. We're saying, if you can learn, and these can be very small incremental steps, to when you're in those places where you're mad at your son or you're so disappointed in your mother or any of that, if you can train yourself to go into that fully open, not being afraid to be human, not being afraid to have a fight with your mother or a fight with your sister, and then capturing that emotion, using your witness to push away every time you think about your mother. You don't have to think about what you've done that your mother is reflecting in you. You just push that away and put this new soundbite in there while you're feeling those things. I'm going to use this emotion to heal my teeth. I'm going to use this emotion to heal the relationship with my mother. And incrementally, piece by piece, you begin to shift from the old humanity, us versus them, blaming other people, not being aware of emotion, to humans who are now capturing this emotion, which is natural for being human. It's not necessarily optimal to live in anger your whole life, but it's a natural emotion, and rechannel it into what it is that you want to create. And it can be for the good of the whole. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be related to the object of your conflict. But what you're doing is harvesting those very precious, creative energies of emotion that have been denied. Psychology, psychiatry, spirituality, a lot of new age thinking says don't feel those things. And so we're trying to undo that and give you a way to harvest what is so powerful in the creative process that humans don't realize.
Yes, others I know are missing out on the ones that say, don't feel your emotions. That definitely is the most powerful way to reclaim our power. And I can say that it does work. I had an experience where I was very upset with my carpenter. Barbara got to hear all about it, and I let it out. And then the next morning, I also had another experience with him, and I just had this emotion. And I did use this emotion to say that I am peace, I am love, I am truth. And sure enough, I had to go to the store and get more paint for him. And when I came back after doing this exercise, I didn't even have to stand up for myself, which is what my issue is here, standing up for myself. He shifted and said, I realize that it's raining and I shouldn't be painting in the rain. I didn't have to stand up for myself and tell him truthfully what I was thinking. he did it himself. So that's even more of a miracle of this, just making the change within us and then seeing that reflected outside of us. Thank you very much. Very powerful message.
Yes, and this idea that it's all about frequency. When you were speaking earlier about regenerating physical illnesses or teeth or what have you, and it's about people too, because part of why Barbara was sharing a conflict that has been going on for a while, and the players in the conflict have all managed to somehow be in front of her, and it's a whole different dynamic than it has been for the past 2 years. A lot because of the frequency that she has changed. And that's what conflict revolution is all about, is that when you change your whole inner world and your frequency, when you embrace and love all your emotions, when you master your intellect, like you did when you were going to the store and doing this, let me be peace, let me be love. Now you're creating that within, and it has an absolute connection to those people. It absolutely, we wouldn't say inspires, but inspires some part of their energy to relate differently, because they sense that, they feel that peace, they feel it on a level they might not even be able to talk about. Your carpenter may not be able to say, oh, I was feeling this different energy from you, and so I calmed down. Eventually, maybe humans will be that evolved. In our circle, we're getting there, but this is why birthing the new humanity is still in progress. And thank you all of you for your thoughts and feelings and senses and your commitment to doing this.
I'd like to thank you so much for the 7-year explanation. I have wondered about that for a long time. I kept thinking, if we're regenerating every cell by every 7 years, why are the outgoing cells telling the incoming cells, the replacements, to carry on in some of the ways that our bodies do, called aging and dis-ease and so on? When an answer comes to something that's been not a burning question, but an ongoing questioning of what we're being told and how things are being described and what we have bought into. Yeah, I'm just so thrilled that you reflected on that and with the information that you brought forward. And I'll leave you with the fact that it then brought me to the thought of, well, is that another, what do you want to call it, another type of the 7-year itch is where I'm going. So again, just so thankful and grateful to be sitting here and to hear you expound on something that I've questioned for a long time. Thank you.
Yes, and the reason why they continue to program the new as per the old, part of it is the subatomic level, we'll say, because in order to continually to recreate Lynn, who looks like this and who has this, there's a certain amount of repetitive reprogramming. But what's been happening in this consciousness raising of the past, 100 years, 50 years, what have you, is that now you have the potential to be a part of regeneration with your consciousness, as we've been teaching and training, and others too. But by employing that, you can shift and recreate your life in different ways. And Barbara's a good example, growing up in such deep trauma, going through life with a subatomic trauma that's constantly influencing decisions and such. And then digging deep into that trauma, feeling that trauma on so many different levels of conflict to release all of that abscess and going on to create this new life. Now, we just want to say that there are certain indigenous Toltec, shape-shifting that kind of activity is very authentic and very doable, but that training breaks intellectual culture down to nothing. And most average humans don't have the mental health capacity to lose their identity so much that they turn into a crow. But those things are possible on those much, much, much deeper levels. So keep at the consciousness of it, and the consciousness of your daily emotions, and the consciousness of your daily thinking, and how those two work together. And the more that you can take those tiny little baby steps to create a regenerative process with your thoughts and your emotions, the more you're going to see the vitality and the natural birthright of health and abundance flourish.
Hi, I have a question about compassion as the fifth fundamental force of the universe. How and where and why and when, how was that discovered? I've been rereading in the Imagining Einstein, the Science of Compassion chapter, page 57, and I will continue. But where did that first come from? Compassion versus, say, something else, say respect, or say anything else.
Well, it's in a much greater definition of compassion as the fifth fundamental force, because it is the force that impels consciousness to create circular membrane domains that become your compilation of consciousness, like a compass that draws circles. It also impels the compilation of consciousness to be aligned to true north, so that you're all on the same map. And it is the power and the force that brings together all the separate pieces of consciousness to understand that they are actually one being. Respect doesn't do that. So you're looking at too small of a cultural definition of compassion.
I just chose that out of the blue. Who discovered this? Who discovered it?
Einstein.
Yeah. In Afterlife, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's not written about anywhere else or described that way anywhere else. Is that true?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, as I suspected. Thanks.
Compassion is the fifth fundamental force of the universe, is so far ahead of its time. Once it's introduced into the right ears, it becomes explosive as E equals MC squared was. And over time, this is the course that we're taking.
Very good.
We're going to close the channel at this time to say thank you. Thank you so much to all of you who gather on this regular basis. You are helping to move along evolution in ways that you might not be able to see right now, but we hope that our conversations and gatherings will help you expand your awareness of this depth of who you are as a human, knowing that you have been given the power of God, and you are here to remove all the obstacles within you from the voices of culture in order to embrace all of that power. And you have to do it incrementally. You know, we told you once, you don't give a 10-year-old the car keys. You are learning step by step. And in doing so, you're changing your DNA, you're expanding the future, you're helping to see these new children who are coming into the world with this innate and natural understanding that they have this power. And you are the ones who can help influence the language You can help change the voices of culture and the culture around you by living and honoring yourself in this way, by working hard to become the change, and by first and foremost practicing self-love, because that is what will allow you to watch and be amazed. Namaste.